In the shadows of ancient tombs, sheltered by the branches of blossoming cherry trees, in Gyeongju, the city of eternal spring, a monstrous secret lay hidden. The city, steeped in the spirit of history and a measured pace of life, suddenly became the arena of a nightmare, as if a crack had spread across the flawless canvas of prosperity. And from this crack, darkness erupted. At the beginning of the 2000s, when the spirit of traditions still reigned in Gyeongju, and news reports were filled with stories of prosperity and family values, strange things began to happen in the city. At first, it was simply disappearances. Young women vanished without a trace, as if dissolving into thin air. The police, accustomed to more understandable crimes, such as petty theft or traffic accidents, were in a state of bewilderment. Reports of missing persons were taken, but almost no real searches were conducted. No one took these disappearances seriously, attributing it all to the frivolity of young girls who had decided to run away from strict families, or simply go in search of a better life in larger cities. But soon it became clear that behind these disappearances lay something more than just a desire to escape harsh reality. Bodies began to be found in the vicinity of Gyeongju. The bodies of young women, mutilated and disfigured like dolls in the hands of a mad creator, lay silent testimony to unprecedented cruelty. Each murder struck with not only its inhumanity, but also strange, ritualistic details, which caused people to speak of something more than a simple outburst of rage or random violence. The first victim, whose name became known to the general public, was Park So-yeon, a young student, a beauty whose eyes shone with life and hopes. The girl showed great promise, studying at the Faculty of Korean Literature and dreaming of a career as a writer. Park So-yeon disappeared one evening while returning home from class. Her friends and family searched for her, posting announcements everywhere, but all efforts were in vain. After only a few days, her body was found in a forest belt on the outskirts of the city. The place where the unfortunate girl was found was by no means accidental. It was an ancient burial mound, one of many historical sites in ancient Gyeongju. It seemed the killer was trying to connect their evil deeds to something profound, rooted in the ages, something unchanging and eternal. The autopsy of Park So-yeon's body plunged everyone into horror. She had endured unimaginable tortures before being ruthlessly deprived of life. Her body bore the marks of countless punctures, deep cuts, and agonizing burns, as if the executioner was meticulously writing a pattern of suffering. The objects found at the crime scene eloquently testified to the killer's sadistic enjoyment, their desire to prolong their victim's agony, to extend her suffering. The murderer of Park So-yeon was the first, but unfortunately by no means the last ominous signal. The Gyeongju police, realizing the full scale of the unfolding tragedy, finally began a serious investigation. A special investigative team was formed, led by the experienced detective Choi, a man known for his unwavering persistence and a sharp, penetrating mind. But time inexorably passed, and the case hardly moved forward. There were catastrophically few clues and even fewer witnesses. The city, gripped by a chilling terror, descended into a state of panic, bracing itself for another disaster. Parents anxiously called their daughters home as darkness fell. Women now preferred to stick together, avoiding the dark, deserted alleyways. The atmosphere of fear and widespread distrust, like acid, corroded Gyeongju from within. Kim Min-ji became the second link in this terrifying chain. She was a celebrated dancer who shone on the stage of the local theater. Bright, talented, she captivated the hearts of the audience with her incredible grace and artistry. Her disappearance was a real shock to the entire city. Minji had been a bright spot in the grey, monotonous routine, and her death seemed incredibly unjust and absurd. Kim Minji's body was discovered in the same forest where Park So-yeon had been found earlier. The place where they found the dancer was shrouded in mystery and ancient legends, located not far from the ruins of an ancient temple. The killer seemed to choose victims and crime scenes as if drawing inspiration from the history and culture of ancient Gyeongju. The city became his dark stage, and innocent souls the characters in his twisted novel. With each new victim, the cruelty of the criminal escalated, as if reaching an apex in his insane play. He didn't just take lives, he cynically mocked the bodies, leaving messages that were only understandable to his perverted mind. The police, gripped by panic, were completely stumped. There was no clear motive, nor any discernible pattern in the choice of victims, except that they were all young women. Detective Choi, feeling cold horror in his heart, realized he was dealing with someone whose mind was far more sophisticated than initially thought. He began to meticulously study the psychological profiles of the most dangerous psychopath criminals, trying to penetrate this person's consciousness to understand what drove his monstrous deeds. As the number of victims surpassed 1, 2, 3, the pressure on the police steadily increased. Local newspapers screamed with ominous headlines about the Gyeongju Monster, sowing panic and fear in the hearts of the townsfolk. The public demanded the immediate solving of these monstrous crimes. The city boiled like a cauldron, filled with rumors and the wildest theories. Some whispered of a curse from ancient gods whose shadows had fallen upon the city. Others blamed the destructive influence of foreign cultures. The police, in turn, were under immense, almost unbearable pressure. The inability to catch the criminal undermined the already fragile trust in the authorities, causing anger and despair among ordinary citizens. Detective Choi and his team worked day and night, but all their efforts seemed to break against a deaf wall. They questioned every witness, carefully combed the crime scenes, painstakingly studied every clue. But the criminal remained elusive, like a ghost. Soon after the brutal murder of Kim Minji, a new, disturbing twist emerged in the case. Fragments of a strange note were discovered at the scene. On scraps of yellowed paper, fragments of poetry were scrawled, hinting at a deep, almost agonizing attachment to the victims, alongside mysterious symbols reminiscent of ancient runes, as if carved by the hand of an unknown master. Detective Choi, in desperation, decided to seek the aid of Professor Song, a recognized expert in Korean literature and history. The gray-haired professor, after carefully studying the cryptic note, concluded that the mysterious symbols were part of an ancient, secret system used in dark rituals. The verses, skillfully written in classical Korean, reflected a profound obsession with beauty and, strangely, mortality. Professor Song suggested that the killer was most likely a highly educated person, intimately familiar with the history and culture of ancient Gyeongju, possibly even suffering from some form of mental disorder. From that moment, the investigation, which had seemed hopeless, finally began to move forward. The police started meticulously examining the social circles of all the victims, paying particular attention to those who showed a heightened interest in history, literature, and art. Hundreds of people were questioned, but not a single lead yielded a concrete result. Time relentlessly marched on, and the murders continued, like an ominous song echoing in the night. Each new victim became a blow to the psyche of Detective Choi and his team. They felt their helplessness, burdened by a crushing guilt towards the families of the deceased, whose lives were cut short, leaving behind only ashes of memories and profound sorrow. Fear gripped the city in a deadly embrace. Even during the day, the streets emptied as people were afraid to leave their homes. The power the killer visibly wielded over the city was unbearable. But during one of the interrogations, a friend of Kim Min-ji, a witness in the case, remembered a strange stranger. This man often attended the girl's performances, gave her flowers, dedicated poems to her, and seemed to stalk her. However, Kim never paid him any attention. The witness detailed his appearance, a tall, thin man with a piercing, cold gaze and a sickly pallor. Based on this description, the police created a composite sketch. His likeness flooded all forms of media and was plastered on walls of houses and on lampposts. The townspeople began to watch the faces of passers-by with much more care. And then one evening, in a cozy little cafe, a vendor recognized the man from the sketch among the customers. He immediately dialed the police, his hands trembling as he conveyed what had happened. When sirens sliced through the night's silence and the police arrived at the scene of the crime, the man was already preparing to vanish into the darkness. During the attempt to apprehend him, he fiercely resisted, but the officers proved stronger and subdued him. The detainee was Jong-hoon, a quiet and unassuming history teacher from the local college, a man whom no one would ever have suspected of such a thing. A chilling array of evidence was discovered during the search of his apartment. Photographs of victims, as if torn from a nightmare, blood-stained knives gleaming in the light of the flashlights, and clothing in which presumably the murders had been committed. Also found were those very notes, covered in mysterious ritual symbols that struck fear even into the seasoned investigators. All the evidence unambiguously indicated his involvement in the series of brutal murders that the press had been trumpeting for several months. During the interrogations, Jong-hoon behaved strangely and aloofly. He didn't deny his guilt, yet not a flicker of remorse crossed his face. His voice remained steady as he spoke of beauty and perfection, claiming his victims were merely a small part of his grand design. He described his monstrous deeds with icy calm, as if recounting something utterly ordinary, like brewing tea, not taking the lives of innocent people. He spoke of his obsession with beauty, how it had captured his mind, and how he felt compelled to preserve it, to keep it for himself. He believed that by destroying the temporary, he was immortalizing the eternal, creating something timeless. A psychiatric evaluation confirmed that Jong-hoon suffered from a severe mental disorder, raising questions about his sanity. He was declared legally insane and sentenced to compulsory treatment in a specialized facility. But even after the killer's arrest, fear lingered in Gyeongju. The city seemed to freeze in apprehensive anticipation. People feared he might escape from the hospital, or even more terrifyingly, that followers would emerge ready to walk in his footsteps. The trial of Jong-hoon was a true ordeal for the victims' families. They came seeking to understand why this man had taken the lives of their loved ones. They searched for explanations, for meaning, hoping to hear even a hint of remorse, but found none. In their hearts they yearned for justice, but received only a formal verdict. They were left to reconcile themselves to this pain, carrying with them the memories of those they had loved, and hoping that someday, after many years, the fear would subside and the city could breathe freely again. The case of Lee Jong-hoon shook the entire country. A heated debate unfolded in the media. Journalists and experts discussed the reasons for his monstrous cruelty, questioned the role of mental disorders in his crimes, and criticized the shortcomings of the justice system. In the city, it seemed they began to talk about things they had previously preferred to remain silent about. The violence women endured, the unbearable psychological pressure reigning in society, the loneliness and despair that were eating away at people's souls. After Lee Jong-hoon's arrest, life in Gyeongju gradually but surely returned to its familiar course. The fear that had settled in the hearts of the citizens receded, but the deep scars left by his atrocities remained. The city was forced to re-evaluate its history, its culture, and its values. The Lee Jong-hoon case served as a harsh lesson for everyone. It vividly showed that evil could hide beneath the guise of the ordinary, that even in the quietest and most peaceful towns, terrible things could happen. This case reminded everyone of the importance of vigilance, the need to fight against prejudices and stereotypes, and the enduring value of human life. But what drove this man to commit such terrible acts? What pushed him toward these monstrous crimes? Was he simply insane, or were there deeper reasons behind his actions? Did secrets still remain in this story, waiting to be revealed? Like many others, I found it difficult to understand how such savage cruelty could be justified. How could someone call themselves a creator while ruthlessly ending the lives of others? Just imagine. A quiet, seemingly harmless teacher, an ordinary man, suddenly transforms into a real monster living among us. His passion for beauty has morphed into a morbid obsession with death. The city he chose for his crimes will forever hold this terrible nightmare in its memory. The case of Lee Jong-hoon isn't just a story of crime. It's a story of the dark shadows lurking within a person's soul, a struggle against horror, attempts to find meaning in a world where answers slip away. It's a story of how one single person can turn an entire city into ruins, how his power, his decisions, his evil deeds can obliterate homes, streets, and lives. But it is also a story of something else, of an indomitable will, of the desire for life, and of how a city, like a phoenix, rises from the ashes, of how something seemingly destroyed forever finds new life, of how people, having experienced pain and loss, find the strength to rebuild everything anew, to breathe life into every stone, into every corner, so that the city would shine brighter than before, like 1,000 suns,